Welcome to Daily Papers, the podcast where we break down the latest fascinating research into bite-sized pieces.
Today, we're diving into a really big problem: neurological diseases. Things like Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, and bipolar disorder affect billions of people worldwide. And for most of them, we don't have treatments that can actually slow or stop the disease.
It's one of the biggest challenges in modern medicine. The problem is that the brain is just so incredibly complex. We have mountains of data, from genetics to brain cells to patient symptoms, but connecting all those dots to find a new drug is like searching for a needle in a continent-sized haystack.
But what if you could build a super detective to search that haystack for you? That's the core idea behind a new paper from researchers at Harvard and other institutions. They've built a powerful new AI called Proton to generate new, testable ideas about these devastating diseases.
An AI that comes up with scientific hypotheses? How does that even work?
Well, Proton is a special kind of AI called a graph AI. The first thing the researchers did was build a massive database called NeuroKG, which stands for Neurology Knowledge Graph. You can think of it like building the ultimate social network for biology.
A social network for biology? What do you mean?
Instead of people and their friends, the knowledge graph has nodes for things like genes, proteins, drugs, diseases, and even different cell types in the brain. And instead of friend connections, it has links that represent real biological relationships, like this drug targets this protein, or this gene is associated with this disease.
Okay, so it's a giant interconnected web of all our biological knowledge about the brain.
Exactly. It has over 147,000 nodes and more than 7 million connections. It's way too much for any human to hold in their head, but Proton can navigate this entire web. It's trained to see patterns and predict missing links, which is another way of saying it predicts new scientific discoveries.
That's the theory, but does it actually work? Did they put it to the test?
They sure did, in 3 really impressive ways. First up was Parkinson's disease. We know Parkinson's involves the death of specific brain cells called dopaminergic neurons, but there's a lot we don't understand. So they asked Proton to do a few things.
Like what?
First, they asked it to connect the dots between genetic risk factors for Parkinson's and the genes that are essential for keeping those dopamine neurons alive. And it did. It found the strongest links for Parkinson's compared to 10 other diseases, suggesting it's finding something specific and important.
So it's helping to explain why certain genetic risks lead to the disease.
Precisely. Then they did something really cool. It's long been suspected that environmental factors, like pesticides, could increase the risk for Parkinson's, so they fine-tuned Proton to predict which pesticides might be toxic to those vulnerable neurons.
So it's like a virtual toxicology screen?
Exactly, a screen done entirely on a computer, or in silico. Proton generated a ranked list of the most likely toxic pesticides out of almost 600, and near the very top at number 9 was a pesticide called endosulfan. Sure enough, when this was tested in the lab on neurons derived from a Parkinson's patient, endosulfan was found to be highly toxic.
Wow, so the AI's prediction was validated by a real lab experiment. That's a powerful proof of concept. What was the next test?
The next test was for bipolar disorder. Here, the team wanted to see if Proton could find a drug that might be repurposed to treat it. Proton sifted through thousands of drugs and nominated a very interesting candidate, calcitriol.
Calcitriol? That sounds familiar. Isn't that related to vitamin D?
It is. It's the active form of vitamin D. The really futuristic part is how they tested it. They used brain organoids.
Many brains in a dish. I love organoids. Can you remind our listeners what they are?
Of course. Scientists take skin or blood cells from patients, turn them back into stem cells, and then guide them to grow into tiny 3D clusters of brain cells that resemble a developing human brain. The amazing thing is, these organoids have the patient's own unique genetic makeup.
So they had mini brains from people with bipolar disorder and from healthy controls. Then what?
Then they looked at all the proteins inside the cells and saw thousands of differences between the bipolar organoids and the healthy ones. Then they treated the bipolar organoids with calcitriol, the drug Proton suggested.
And what happened?
It started to reverse the changes. It didn't fix everything, but it pushed the protein profile of the bipolar organoids to look significantly more like the healthy ones. 4 out of the 5 treated bipolar organoid samples clustered more closely with the healthy controls than with the untreated ones.
That is incredible. A drug predicted by an AI showed a real biological effect on a patient-derived model of the disease. So we've had a lab test and an organoid test. What was the third and final validation?
For the final test, they went even bigger. They turned to Alzheimer's disease and real-world patient data. They asked Proton to predict drugs approved for other conditions that might reduce a person's risk of developing dementia.
Drug repurposing again, but this time they checked it in people.
Well, in their data, they analyzed the electronic health records of over 610,000 patients. They picked 8 top drugs that Proton flagged, found people who were taking those drugs for other reasons like diabetes or high blood pressure, and compared their rates of dementia over 7 years to people who had the same condition but weren't taking that specific drug.
And the results?
The 8 drugs Proton predicted were 5 associated with a significantly lower risk of developing dementia. For example, a diabetes drug was linked to a 30% risk reduction, and a blood pressure medication was linked to a 17% reduction.
This feels like a huge step forward. The AI isn't just making predictions in a vacuum. Its hypotheses were tested and confirmed at the molecular level with proteins, at the cellular level with organoids, and at the population level with massive clinical datasets.
That's the key takeaway. It's creating what the researchers call an AI experiment discovery loop. The AI generates promising ideas from massive amounts of data, and then scientists can focus their experiments on testing the very best ideas of those. It's a way to make the scientific process faster, smarter, and more efficient.
So the AI isn't replacing scientists, it's giving them a powerful new tool to navigate that giant biological haystack and find the needles that really matter.
Exactly. It's a glimpse into a future where AI and human scientists work together to unravel the mysteries of the brain and hopefully find the treatments we so desperately need.